On February 12, 1980, in Hong Kong, a worker was working at Lai Yuen Pier near the Xingmun River. Suddenly, he noticed a strange object floating near the water's surface. Out of curiosity, the man picked it up and was horrified to the point of nearly fainting when he realized it was a decomposing human head. Regaining his composure, he immediately reported the incident to the police. Investigators quickly arrived at the scene to verify. However, with such scarce clues, the police found themselves at a dead end as they could not find any further leads from this lifeless head. They wondered, who could commit such a heinous crime? What was their motive? These questions weighed heavily on everyone's minds. The journey to solve the case and find answers would surely be intense and thrilling. Subscribe to our channel to explore it with us right after this. Hong Kong in the 1980s was a place that embodied both the ancient beauty of Asia and the glow of neon lights from bustling streets. This place was famous for Lai Yuen Bridge, connecting the two banks of the Xingmun River, which had witnessed countless beautiful love stories. But during stormy nights, this bridge turned into a place soaked with rain and a vague fear among the people. The sound of rushing water mixed with the rain created an eerie soundtrack, like a warning of impending danger. Or in other words, it was the prelude to the nightmare known as the Rainy Night Butcher. Back at the crime scene, the police quickly cordoned off the area and conducted an investigation after receiving the report. The victim had curled hair. Her mouth was slightly open, revealing 3 false teeth. Both ears still had gold earrings. This detail led investigators to rule out robbery as the motive for the murder. Preliminary assessments indicated that the victim was a woman. The head had been submerged in water for a long time, causing severe swelling, making facial identification impossible. The police expanded their search to surrounding areas. About 200 meters from the scene, an officer discovered a floating yellow plastic bag. Upon opening it, another body part was found. 4 days later, they found an upper torso and an arm in nearby canals. The most notable detail was a distinctive tattoo on the arm, a sword piercing through a heart with a bird perched beside it. At that time, tattoos on women were not common. Seeing this image, the police immediately recognized it as a valuable clue to identify the victim. Wasting no time, they publicized the clue and called on anyone who could recognize the tattoo or earrings to contact the authorities. As soon as the information about the distinctive tattoo was broadcast in the media, a few days later, a middle-aged man came forward to identify his daughter's body. He said that his daughter had replaced 3 teeth to enhance her appearance and had a tattoo of a swallow near a heart on her left arm, just as reported. Based on the details of the earrings, false teeth, and tattoo, he was certain it was his daughter. The victim was identified as Chen Fenglan, 21 years old, born in the rural region of Hebei, who had moved to Hong Kong 2 years prior in search of opportunities. She worked at a renowned tailoring shop in the bustling district of Mong Kok. She was married to a man named Chen Yongfeng, who owned a small car repair shop. Their family life had long shown signs of rift. Neighbors often heard arguments between the two, mainly revolving around jealousy and unreasonable suspicions from Yongfeng. Chen Fenglan had also shared with her friends that she felt controlled and pressured by her husband. Their marriage was perhaps nearing its end. Based on this clue, the police focused on her husband, Chen Yongfeng. However, when questioned about his wife's death, Yongfeng denied any involvement and claimed his innocence. The time of the victim's death was approximately 10 days before she was discovered. But during that time, Yongfeng was in Liaoning visiting family, with many witnesses to verify this. Therefore, he was ruled out as a suspect. The investigation continued, with exploring Fenglan's relationships at the tailoring shop. A colleague recounted that on the night Fenglan was believed to have gone missing, she had attended a co-worker's birthday celebration at a bar in Lan Kwai Fong. Fenglan drank quite a lot. The last time I saw her, she was drunk and got into a red taxi. Everyone was tipsy, and no one paid attention or remembered the license plate of the taxi. At this point, this was the only lead on Chen Fenglan's whereabouts. But in the glamorous city of Hong Kong, there were too many taxis like that. Finding the right one was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Time passed and the investigation saw no progress. Interrogating her suitors, including regular customers at her workplace, yielded no results. They all had clear alibis. This particularly serious case was actually just the beginning of a series of disappearances in the following months. All the victims were young women who disappeared on rainy nights, times when the killer could easily act without drawing much attention. The name, Rainy Night Butcher, was born from this. The investigative team worked tirelessly, day and night, sifting through hundreds of leads, but still could not find any commonality between the disappearances. The press described the police as fighting against a ghost, a predator who only struck in the dark. Just when it seemed that finding the killer would forever remain a mystery, in August of the same year, a crucial lead emerged when the police received a tip from a resident. Lin Zhenhui, who worked at a small photo shop in Kowloon district, called in a trembling voice. "I need you to come immediately. While processing some photos, I discovered strange images. They look like human body parts." This call marked a major turning point in the investigation. According to the information the police collected from Lin Zhenhui and the shop staff, these gruesome photos were not taken by the shop, but were brought in by a customer. The shop owner recounted to the police that the customer claimed to be a mortuary photographer, responsible for taking photos of body parts for cases of accidents and unexplained deaths. Although macabre, this job was completely legal and necessary for forensic examinations. The owner explained further, "Due to the nature of his work, I always handled it personally. But today, I was out dealing with personal matters, so another staff member took it on." This explained why Lin Zhenhui noticed something unusual and reported it to the police. The police analyzed the photos reported by the shop. Investigators realized that if these body parts were genuinely photographed in the mortuary for medical purposes, they would have to be preserved at very low temperatures. However, in the photos, the body parts appeared completely fresh and showed no signs of being refrigerated. Based on the color of the flesh, forensic staff concluded that the time of death of the victims was no more than 3 hours before the body parts were photographed. This raised a major question. Were these body parts truly processed according to medical procedures? From what they saw, the way the bodies were dismembered in the photos was very crude, with no sign of expertise in surgical knowledge. The forensic department also thoroughly analyzed the quality of the photos and concluded that these were not reproductions of old prints, but photos taken directly from real corpses. A particular detail in one of the photos caught the attention of the investigative team. A small droplet of water appeared in the top right corner. When zoomed in, they could see half of a girl's face reflected in it. The investigative team quickly compared this face with missing person records and noticed a strange resemblance to a 17-year-old girl named Liang Hui-shin, who had been reported missing a month earlier. Immediately, the customer who brought the photos to the shop was listed as the prime suspect. The investigation team asked the shop staff to provide more details about this individual. The shop owner described he had an average build, short hair, deep-set eyes, and often wore an old black cap. He didn't talk much, just came and went quickly. Not wanting to overlook any clue, the police organized a stakeout to determine the true origin of the photos. Around 4 p.m. on August 17th, a man walked into the shop, appearing cautious and wearing the old black cap as previously described. He glanced around before approaching the counter and asked briefly, "Are my photos ready?" When the shop employee nodded and handed over the photo packet, the man checked it quickly and turned to leave. Just as he turned, 2 police officers appeared and asked him to cooperate. The man looked surprised but tried to maintain a calm demeanor. "I'm just picking up for a neighbor nearby. It has nothing to do with me," he said, his tone neutral. The police decided to follow him to the address he provided. However, upon arrival, they quickly realized the harsh truth. There was no such neighbor as he claimed. No one had asked him to pick up any photos. With conflicting evidence and clear deceit, the police immediately arrested the man on the spot. The investigation team quickly conducted a search of his red taxi. Inside the car, investigators were shocked to find a blood-stained rope in the trunk, a partially used roll of duct tape, and a dirty old hammer. There were scratch marks on the back seat, likely due to a struggle. After the arrest, the police quickly identified the man. His name was Lin Guo-yun, born in 1955, from a rural area in the southern province of Guangdong. He grew up in a poor family. His parents divorced when he was 7, and he lived with his stepfather, an alcoholic who frequently abused him. Lin Guoyun's childhood was steeped in violence and isolation. Deprived of love, he became withdrawn and difficult to approach. At 18, Lin Guoyun left his hometown to find work in the city. However, he soon got involved in thefts and was imprisoned for the first time at the age of 20. After serving his sentence, Lin tried to rebuild his life by seeking honest work, but his criminal past and societal prejudice made it impossible for him to maintain a stable job. The pressure from failure and the feeling of being rejected grew, making Lin increasingly out of control and resentful towards society. In 1980, Lin was arrested a second time for assaulting a woman in a bar after she rejected his advances. This time, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During this period, he began to exhibit clear signs of mental disorder and was even transferred to a psychiatric hospital for a short time for treatment, but with no positive outcome. By 1985, after completing his prison sentence and being released from the psychiatric hospital, Lin tried to reintegrate into society and started working as a taxi driver, a job that allowed him to move around frequently and avoid prolonged contact with others. When faced with police questioning about the discovered photos, Lin Guoyun remained cold and completely silent. He refused to answer any questions, maintaining a vacant, challenging stare. Upon searching Lin Guoyun's house, the police discovered numerous photography equipment, indicating he had turned his home into a professional studio. Lin Guoyun lived with his father, Lin Weilei, a frail alcoholic, and his half-brother, Lin Guoqiang. While inspecting Lin's bedroom, investigators recognized that the photos found at the photo shop were taken in this very room. Under the bed, they found an old wooden chest filled with sensitive photos and anatomy books with detailed images of human body parts, especially of women. Among those photos were a few depicting the swallow tattoo near the heart, taken from various angles. Yes, it was the tattoo of the first female victim discovered. In addition to the photos, the police also found more than 40 videotapes labeled with numbers, a red handbag, and a pair of white shoes. Notably, surgical tools such as scalpels and scissors were neatly arranged as if they were frequently used. Even more terrifying were large plastic jars with their lids removed, emitting a foul stench. Upon closer inspection, they were horrified to discover that these jars contained private parts of women preserved in formaldehyde. At first glance, Lin Guoyun's room appeared clean, but faint traces on the floor did not escape the eyes of the investigation team. The forensic team decided to use luminol, a substance that detects blood even after it has been cleaned. Using available materials such as hydrogen peroxide-based cleaners, they quickly prepared the solution. A sense of tension filled the room as the investigator carefully sprayed the luminol solution on the floor and turned off the lights. In the darkness, pale blue stains gradually appeared. The blood stains, although thoroughly cleaned, reacted strongly with this solution, showing clearly on the floor and walls. This was undoubtedly the scene of a brutal dismemberment. Due to the sheer volume of items and evidence, the house search continued for 4 consecutive hours. Lin's father, Lin Weilei, and his half-brother, Lin Guoqiang, were also detained for questioning. Despite all the evidence against Lin Guoyun, he still denied his crimes, remaining silent and uncooperative. Lin Weilei and Lin Guoqiang, when questioned, claimed to know nothing about Lin Guoyun's activities. Lin Guoqiang admitted that his brother was very secretive and never allowed anyone to touch his belongings. Time was the greatest enemy of the police at this point. If they could not find the victim's body or more conclusive evidence, they could only hold Lin Guoyun for 48 hours. The investigation needed to be expedited, and every effort was focused on gathering evidence to prevent the killer from escaping justice. The police decided to divide the team to meticulously review each videotape found in Lam's house. Most of the tapes were inconsequential, but 3 tapes, when played, left everyone holding their breath. These tapes appeared to be filmed by Lin Guoyun himself, which surprised the investigation team as producing videotapes at that time required meticulousness and technical knowledge that few amateurs possessed. The presence of these 3 tapes proved his level of meticulous and horrifying preparation. The tapes recorded in detail the process of him dismembering the girls. Something we might only think happens in horror movies. The height of horror came when the last tape ended, and Lin Guo-yun smiled at the camera. His smile was cold, full of smugness, and without remorse. His deep eyes seemed to stare directly at those watching, causing some officers to instinctively look away. With this clue, Lin Guo-yun could be fully charged, but the investigators wanted him to confess, so they used a psychological tactic. In the interrogation room, one officer spoke sternly. "If you don't confess, your father and brother will face charges of complicity. Everything found was in your house, and no one can deny that." Lin Guo-yun remained silent for a few seconds, his eyes scanning the faces of the investigators. The room was so quiet that the ticking of the clock could be heard. Finally, anxiety flashed in his eyes. He sighed, lowered his gaze, and for the first time, a deep confession came from his tightly sealed lips. "I'll tell everything." Perhaps this confession was proof that he hadn't completely lost all humanity. From here, the picture of the tragedy he caused gradually came to light. On February 3, 1982, it rained heavily. Chen Fenglan, heavily intoxicated, was helped by colleagues to hail a taxi. Many drivers refused to take her, but Lin Guo-yun agreed. On the way, Lan could not hold back and vomited all over the seat. Seeing this, combined with her attire and makeup, a deep-seated resentment and prejudice arose in Yun. Instead of taking Lan home, Yun drove straight to his building. While Lan was unconscious, he went inside, took an electrical cord, and returned to the car. He tightened the cord around her neck. The victim could not resist and died shortly after. After killing Lan, Yun carefully brought her body to his apartment and hid it under the sofa in the living room. Waiting until everyone in the house left, he began carrying out his brutal plan. Yun photographed every part of Lan's body from top to bottom, using tape to cover her eyes so he wouldn't have to look at her lifeless gaze. He then used an electric saw to dismember Lan into 7 parts and wrapped them in newspaper. He placed the pieces in his car and drove to a deserted hill in Fotan to dispose of them. A few days later, heavy rain washed the body parts into the Xingmen River, and the head was found, marking the beginning of a series of cases he committed. Upon hearing that the body parts were discovered, Yun realized his mistake and decided to improve his skills to conceal them better. He turned to medical anatomy books to learn how to dismember bodies more professionally. This kept him dormant for the next 3 months before he committed new crimes. His subsequent victims were Chen Yunjae, 31 years old, Liang Shu-yun, 29 years old, and Liang Huixin, 17 years old, all killed and dismembered in the same manner. Apart from the private parts kept as trophies, the remaining body parts were dumped along Taihang Road. After the body parts were found and the investigation completed, Lin Guo-yun was officially brought to trial on a December morning, drawing significant attention from the press and the public. The courtroom was packed with victims' families, reporters, and curious onlookers. Lin Guo-yun entered the courtroom with a cold expression, showing no fear or remorse. He wore an old shirt and looked straight at the judges and the jury without blinking. His defense attorney tried to argue that Lin Guo-yun had a history of mental instability due to an unfortunate childhood and a violent environment. However, the prosecution strongly countered, asserting that despite his tragic past, his actions were entirely calculated and intentional. The videotapes recording the entire process of killing and dismembering were presented as undeniable evidence. In the courtroom, these images and videos caused many to shudder and turn away in fear. Psychologists were also invited to analyze Lin Guo-yun's mental state. They affirmed that he had sufficient awareness to understand that his actions were wrong and was fully capable of controlling himself, proving that he was not out of control. After many days of debate, the court declared Lin Guo-yun guilty of multiple murders with brutal and heinous characteristics, qualifying him for the highest sentence. The jury concluded that his actions reflected severe moral depravity, sentencing Lin Guo-yun to life imprisonment without parole. Upon hearing the verdict, there was no sign of fear or remorse from Lin Guo-yun. He only gave a slight, cold smile that sent chills down the spines of everyone in the courtroom. Public reaction was strong, with some believing that a life sentence was too lenient for what he had done. The story of Lin Go-yeon became a warning about the importance of monitoring the psychology and behavior of individuals showing abnormal signs, especially those with unfortunate pasts and histories of violence. The victims' families continued their lives with an unending grief, but always reminded others of those who had passed, ensuring their stories were never forgotten. Thank you for following this story. If you found the video interesting and informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to not miss future stories. In December 1973, in Seattle, Washington, a series of attacks targeting female students occurred. The victims did not remember the face of the perpetrator. Everything happened too quickly, and he left almost no clues. The police made multiple attempts to reconstruct the events, but to no avail. The identity and motive of the perpetrator remained a mystery. Over the next 6 months, not only did the attacks continue, but the number of missing girls also increased unusually. Each month, new names were added to the list of victims. Most were young, beautiful girls and university students. The horror gradually escalated. The killer, who initially only attacked and left, now began to kill. By 1974, the case had become a collective nightmare for every family in Seattle. The police faced an unprecedented crisis. All investigation teams joined forces with the goal of capturing the criminal as soon as possible. So how will this terrifying story continue? Subscribe to the channel to uncover the mysteries behind it. Seattle, a major city in the northwest of Washington state, is surrounded by majestic mountains and lush green forests. In the 1970s, it was a thriving city, attracting many students and young families seeking education and new beginnings. Life here often brought residents a sense of peace and safety, especially for young girls living away from home, pursuing knowledge and big dreams. However, when night fell, Seattle took on a completely different appearance. The space became strangely quiet. It was the perfect setting for a predator to lurk in the shadows. The story must begin on December 5, 1973, when a man strolling in McKinney Park, Washington, accidentally discovered a body lying in the bushes near the path. At first, he thought it was a mannequin, but when he curiously approached, the pale face and deep wounds on the body caused him to panic. It was definitely a human body, and he immediately reported it to the police. Upon receiving the report, the police quickly arrived and secured the scene. The victim was a woman about 20 years old, lying motionless, eyes wide open, face filled with fear, and disheveled clothes. There were many bruises on her neck, indicating strong strangulation, along with scratches on her arms and legs, showing she had resisted before being fully subdued. Checking the missing persons reports, the police found that Kathy Devine, 21, who had been missing since November 25th, had characteristics matching the victim. So they contacted her relatives for confirmation. And the body found was indeed Kathy Devine's. The forensic report indicated that the time of death was about 2 days after her disappearance, around November 27th. The wounds on her neck were the primary cause of death, but before killing her, the perpetrator had assaulted and beaten her brutally. The police investigated the victim's relationships and interviewed witnesses around the scene, but did not obtain any valuable clues. Kathy was described as quite sociable and did not have conflicts with anyone. Her friends had never seen her face any trouble or difficulties in life. So what reason could have led her to such a fate? While the case was still under investigation, just a month later, terror again swept over the Washington area. On the afternoon of January 4, 1974, in an apartment in Seattle near the University of Washington campus, Len's friends found her unconscious on the bed, her face and head covered in blood. Her clothes were torn, and there were signs of assault. She was taken to the hospital in critical condition. There, doctors confirmed she had a severe head injury from being struck hard on the skull. The serious injury put Lenz in a deep coma, and although treated, her chances of full recovery seemed impossible. With the first case unsolved, the police now had to face a second case. Identifying the perpetrator at this time was a major challenge, as the victims' relationships did not reveal anything suspicious. Less than 4 weeks later, on January 31, 1974, another sudden disappearance occurred in Seattle. Linda Ann Healy, the young, beautiful student, did not show up for her father's birthday party. Everyone tried, but could not contact Ki.ll.er. This was certainly unusual, as she was known to be very careful, and such sudden disappearances were unprecedented. Ki.ll.er lived independently in an apartment near the University of Washington, and when the police came to inspect the place, a series of strange details emerged. Inside the house, the furniture was relatively disordered. The pillow on her bed lacked its outer cover, revealing clear bloodstains on the fabric. Strangely, the bed was neatly made, completely contrasting with the rest of the clutter. The police opened Ki.ll.er's closet and found a blood-stained nightgown at the neck area. Familiar items like the bedsheet, backpack, and some clothing were also missing. The arrangement and the missing items led the police to a bold hypothesis. Could the killer have entered the house, knocked Ki.ll.er unconscious, tidied the bed, and then taken her away? At first, the police refused to believe this scenario. However, as time passed without any trace of Ki.ll.er, they began to realize this case might be more complex than they had imagined. With 3 attacks and disappearances within less than 2 months, panic began to rise. The victims' families felt like they were living in hell, facing the possibility that their loved ones might have met with misfortune. Throughout the spring and summer of 1974, the disappearances expanded to Utah, Oregon, and Washington. The victims were all young, beautiful girls who shared similar appearances. The pattern repeated. All disappeared at night, in their sleepwear, with blood found at the scene. Aside from this familiar pattern, witnesses around the scenes consistently described seeing a strange man with his arm or leg in a cast. He approached and talked to the girls about books, or asked for help starting his VW car. This characteristic became the only piece of the puzzle that helped the police form an image of the perpetrator. By August 1974, the police discovered parts of the bodies of previously missing victims at Lake Sammamish in the National Park area of Washington state. The remains of 2 girls, Janice Ott and Denise Naslund, were identified through a few thigh bones, skull fragments, and part of a jawbone, thanks to the tireless efforts of forensic experts. Witnesses recalled the last time they saw Janice Ott. The young man with a handsome appearance and an arm in a cast approached her. He introduced himself as Ted and asked Ott to help him lift a boat onto the car roof. As for Denise Naslund, she disappeared while playing at an amusement park in the afternoon. At that time, a man with an arm in a cast was also seen talking to Denise. Could all these appearances be coincidences? I am certain that this man was closely related to the disappearances. In October 1974, another tragic event occurred when Melissa Smith, 17, the daughter of the Midvale, Utah sheriff, disappeared. As both a father and an experienced police officer, Louis Smith had always warned his daughter about the dangers out there. But those warnings could not protect her. 9 days after Melissa's disappearance, the police found her body at an abandoned construction site. She suffered the same fate as the previous victims, strangled to death and brutally assaulted. Despite their best efforts, the police found no other clues on the body or at the scene, deepening the despair of the investigation. Just 13 days later, on Halloween night in 1974, Laura Aim, a 17-year-old girl with a radiant smile, disappeared while on her way home after meeting friends. On Thanksgiving Day, Laura's body was found by the bank of a small river in the cold Wasatch Mountains. It appeared that this time the perpetrator had changed the level of violence. Laura was beaten so severely that her face and head were disfigured. Forensic doctors confirmed she had been attacked with a crowbar, a tool commonly used for prying open heavy containers. Laura's body showed clear signs of assault and fatal injuries. The investigation of the scene indicated she had been killed elsewhere, and her body dumped here. The investigation became increasingly complex and tense. Investigators in Utah were almost certain they were dealing with a serial killer. Utah police decided to contact detectives in Oregon and Washington to collaborate on the investigation. The series of disappearances and murders with so many similarities led investigators to believe that only one person was behind it all. After gathering testimonies from all the witnesses, the police gradually built an initial profile of the killer. A young man, attractive in appearance, with short, tidy hair and about 5'9" tall. He often appeared with an arm or leg in a cast, seeking help from young women. The alias Ted, which he often used when approaching victims, began to become his nickname in the investigation files. But who was Ted? Every time the police came close to a clue, he seemed to vanish mysteriously, leaving behind bodies and panic in the community. On the night of November 8, 1974, Ki.ll.er was engrossed in reading at a small bookstore in Utah when a well-dressed, polite man approached her. With a serious expression, he introduced himself as Officer Rosalind and said that a thief was trying to break into her Volkswagen in the parking lot. Ki.ll was surprised but agreed to follow him to the car. When they arrived, Ki.ll saw that her car was intact and assumed the thief had fled, preparing to return to the store. However, Officer Rosalind seemed dissatisfied and insisted she come to the station to report the incident. To avoid trouble, she agreed to go with him to the police station. But once in the car, he drove in the opposite direction, and before Ki.ll could process what was happening, he suddenly stopped. The man grabbed her hand, cuffed it tightly with handcuffs, and pulled a gun from behind his back, pressing it against her, warning her to keep quiet if you don't want to die. Ki.ll was completely terrified, but when he tried to pull her out of the car, she bravely bit his hand and ran for her life. The man roared and chased her, but she managed to reach a couple stopped by the roadside and asked them to take her to the police station. At the Utah police station, with her hands still cuffed, Ki.ll shakily recounted everything, but the name Rosalind was unfamiliar to the police. No one by that name was among their ranks. The investigator immediately issued an alert about the imposter and began a search, hoping to apprehend him. However, he had disappeared mysteriously. That same night at Viewmont High School, student Debbie Kent was busy preparing for a play. However, by the end of the day, her parents still had not seen her return home. Jean Graham, her friend and a witness at the scene, confirmed seeing a strange man watching Debbie throughout the evening. But none of them knew who he was, and the list of missing victims grew longer. The similarities between the cases made the police believe that a predator had found a new territory to satisfy his cruelty. They also increased patrols and searches, hoping to find traces of the suspect. Fear spread, and the image of the police impersonator became more dangerous in the eyes of the investigators, like a mysterious threat always looming. On August 16, 1975, Bob, a patrol officer on duty on Utah's highway, spotted a dark-colored Volkswagen parked by the roadside. With his professional instincts, Bob approached to check. Suddenly, the driver of the Volkswagen noticed the headlights from the police car, turned off the main lights, and sped off into the night at breakneck speed. Sensing something suspicious, Bob immediately turned on the siren and chased the suspicious car. He also radioed for backup to intercept the Volkswagen. The driver of the VW saw that his escape route was blocked and was forced to stop. Bob quickly exited his car, gun in hand, shouting for the driver to step out. He was subdued immediately. Bob and his team inspected the car. Inside, they discovered numerous suspicious items: a crowbar, a ski mask, ropes, handcuffs, electrical cords, and an ice pick. The back seat, which had been removed, had several scratch marks. It was clear these were items the suspect feared would be found. The driver's identity was confirmed as Theodore Robert Bundy. Detectives began connecting the dots. He was likely the man mentioned in all theories with the nickname Ted the Killer. The police believed they might have found the person behind the series of mysterious murders in the Pacific Northwest. On October 2, 1975, Ki.ll.er, the girl who had escaped from the killer the previous November, along with Jean Graham and a friend of Debbie Kent, were summoned to a lineup. Tension filled the room as Ki.ll stepped in, and within moments she pointed at Ted Bundy with unwavering certainty. Jean Graham also confirmed that Ted was the man she had seen loitering at the Viewmont play, where Debbie Kent had disappeared without a trace. The testimonies of both witnesses sounded the alarm, reinforcing the suspicion that Ted was the perpetrator. On September 16, 1975, Meg, Ted Bundy's longtime girlfriend, was invited to the King County Crime Investigation Team. Her face showed a slight tension as she recounted Ted's habits. Meg admitted that on the nights the murders occurred, Ted often left the house late at night. He also began making strange sexual demands and forcing her to be tied up during intimacy. She had also seen plaster for casts in his room and a small axe in his car, but she did not pay much attention to them. With evidence from testimony and witness confirmation, the police decided to prosecute Ted Bundy for the abduction of Carol Durunk. The trial opened on February 23, 1976. The atmosphere was tense in the courtroom as witnesses took the stand one by one to testify to Ted's crimes. During the trial of Carol's case, investigators continued to delve into the deaths of Karen Campbell and Melissa Smith. The forensic report showed that the crowbar found in Ted's car perfectly matched the size and shape of the wound on Karen Campbell's head. This undeniable match prompted Colorado to quickly open another trial on October 22, 1976, charging him with murder. So who was Ted, and why was his list of crimes so diverse? Let's explore a bit more. On November 24, 1946, Eleanor Louise Ki.ll.er, only 22 and unmarried, gave birth to a boy named Theodore Robert Ki.ll.er in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Ted, as Theodore was affectionately called, grew up without knowing his biological father, Lloyd Marshall, a U.S. war veteran. Eleanor's family tried to conceal the shame of her out-of-wedlock birth by adopting Ted and letting him believe that his grandparents were his parents and that his real mother was merely his sister. When Ted was 4 years old, Eleanor decided to leave Pennsylvania and move to Tacoma, Washington, to live with some relatives. To start a new life, she changed her name to Louise Ki.ll.er. Later, she married Johnny Culpepper Bundy, an ordinary cook who always tried to build a fatherly relationship with Ted. However, the boy never truly considered him his real father. Louise and Johnny had 4 children together, and Ted often had to look after his younger siblings after school. This created an invisible rift between him and the family, as Ted always felt different, belonging to the Ki.ll.er lineage rather than the Bundys. The only person he truly listened to was his grandfather, whom Ted revered as his real father. During his childhood, Ted was a shy boy and was often bullied by friends. But in school, he stood out with excellent academic achievements, maintaining top student status until he graduated high school in 1965. A year later, he transferred to the University of Washington and focused on studying Chinese. To support his studies, Ted worked various part-time jobs, from waiting tables to shining shoes at local shops. Despite changing jobs frequently, his academic performance did not decline. In the spring of 1967, things began to change when Ted met Stephanie Brooks, a beautiful and sophisticated girl from California. To Ted, she was the epitome of perfection and the highest goal he never thought he could reach. The relationship with Stephanie drew Ted into a whirlwind of emotions. They went skiing together, strolled, and shared warm dinners. But Stephanie's love was not as deep as Ted believed. She soon realized that Ted lacked direction in life and was not suitable as a life partner. In 1968, after graduation, Stephanie broke up with Ted. He fell into despair, feeling as though the world was collapsing before him. The obsession and pain caused him to drop out of school and fall into a state of mental instability. Ted tried to contact Stephanie through letters, but she rejected him outright. The unanswered letters were like knives cutting deep into Ted's pride, awakening dark thoughts and resentment. In 1969, Ted Bundy's life took a new turn when he accidentally discovered the horrifying truth about his family. He learned that the woman he always called sister was actually his biological mother, while the parents he cherished were actually his grandparents. This news was a shock that completely upended Ted's world. This truth changed Ted completely. From a quiet and somewhat shy young man, he became cold, determined, and revealed a hidden cruel side. Ted began to feel the need to prove himself to the world, and most importantly, to Stephanie Brooks, the woman who once rejected his love. With newfound determination, Ted returned to university and pursued psychology at the University of Washington. He quickly became an outstanding student in this field, earning praise from professors and peers. It was during this time that Ted met Meg Anders, a shy but dedicated secretary. Meg, a divorced woman with a young daughter, found an unusual attraction in Ted. She loved him deeply and hoped for a happy future. However, Ted was still haunted by his past with Stephanie and had no intention of committing long-term to Meg. Many times, Meg witnessed Ted openly flirting with other girls. Although she knew he did not love her the way she wished, Meg persistently believed that her love and care could change Ted. But she did not know that his mind was still filled with images of Stephanie. Between 1969 and 1972, Ted's life seemed to be on a better path. He became confident and ambitious. He applied to law schools at various universities and participated in political activities. Ted even joined the campaign for a former Washington state governor, helping him build influential relationships within the Republican Party. During this time, Ted was praised for saving a 3-year-old boy who nearly drowned at a lake. These successes further reinforced his belief in his chosen path and made him feel content with himself. In 1973, during a Republican Party business trip to California, Ted reunited with Stephanie Brooks. She was surprised to see Ted more mature and refined compared to their university days. They rekindled their relationship, and Ted kept it a secret from Meg. In the following fall and winter months, Ted put all his effort into charming Stephanie once again. He repeatedly proposed to her, promising a perfect future. Although Stephanie was still doubtful, Ted's transformation won her over. But the harmony only lasted for a short time. Ted suddenly became cold and indifferent towards Stephanie. He ignored all her messages, did not respond, and abruptly vanished from her life. By February 1974, Stephanie realized she had been deceived. Ted had achieved his sweet revenge, making her experience the pain of abandonment that he once endured. She understood that everything was a carefully orchestrated act of revenge Ted had planned. After successfully taking revenge, Ted completely cut off contact with Stephanie, as if she had never existed. It was at this point that darkness truly began to take over his mind, preparing him for the brutal acts that would shock America in the years to come. In April 1977, amidst the suffocating atmosphere of the Garfield County courtroom, Ted Bundy awaited the verdict for the crimes he had committed. With terrifying confidence and cold eyes, he refused legal assistance and defended himself. He believed he would win or at least find a way to escape before the trial scheduled for November. Granted access to the law library to research for his defense, Ted quietly plotted an escape plan. On June 7th, taking advantage of a lapse in supervision, he suddenly jumped out of the library window from the second floor. The fall injured his ankle, but the thirst for freedom pushed Ted to blend into the crowds of Aspen, disappearing before the police's astonished eyes. Ted's sudden move prompted the Aspen police to issue an emergency alert, blocking all city exits. The manhunt for the killer was intense, involving over 150 volunteers and tracking dogs. However, Ted knew how to maneuver, hiding in the dense forest. In the dark of night, Ted realized that escaping could not last without transportation. He sneaked into a nearby garage and stole a car with the keys still inside. But just when he thought he had escaped the net, the car malfunctioned, forcing him to stop. On the 6th day after his daring escape, Ted was spotted by the police in the stolen car. This time, he was handcuffed both hand and foot. Yet Ted's determination did not end there. On December 30th, he secretly planned his second jailbreak. Exploiting a crack in the wall of his cell, Ted used a stolen spoon to dig his way to freedom. On a drizzly night at the end of the month, he squeezed through the small opening and sneaked into the warden's room. Waiting until no one was around, Ted calmly walked out of the front door of the prison as if he were an uninvited guest. The police only realized Ted was gone after 15 hours, giving him enough time for a safe start and to cross miles to Chicago. With this ticket, he continued his criminal journey to Florida, where he found a new life under the alias Chris Hagen. In January 1978, Ted appeared in Tallahassee, Florida, and found an apartment near Florida State University. With his handsome looks and charming smile, he easily blended into the student environment. In the small room, every item, including meals, was the result of petty thefts. He lived in secrecy but was satisfied, and the dark ambition within him seemed to still smolder. On the night of July 14th, an air of excitement filled the Chi Omega sorority house as the girls returned from a party. Little did they know, darkness was concealing a monster in human guise. At 3 a.m., Nita Neary returned to the sorority and immediately noticed something was wrong when the front door was wide open. A strange noise echoed from upstairs, and a shadow dashed towards the stairs. Hidden behind a door, Nita was horrified to see a man wearing a blue cap, holding a club wrapped in cloth, hurrying past. In shock, Nita ran upstairs to alert her friend Nancy Dowdy. The two tried to find the house mother. Instead, they encountered Karen Chandler, her face covered in blood, staggering into the hallway. The scene in another room was even more horrifying. Lisa Levy lay motionless in a pool of blood, her head bearing terrible wounds. Signs indicated she had been assaulted and strangled. Bite marks on her body pointed to unimaginable brutality. Margaret Bowman, Lisa's roommate, suffered the same fate with a powerful blow that cracked her skull. The silence of the night was shattered by screams of terror and the shock of those who witnessed it. The police knew the worst was yet to come. Ted Bundy was back. 2 days later, the quiet was broken by a loud noise from Cheryl Thompson's room, about 1.5 kilometers from the Ki.ll.er house. Debbie Ciccarelli, in the next room, heard strange sounds. Focusing, she realized it was the sound of painful groans coming from the other side of the wall. Debbie woke her roommate, Nancy Young. The two listened intently, then quickly called the police upon sensing the urgency. The police, already on site at the Ki.ll.er house, arrived within minutes. Entering the room, the police were met with a horrifying sight. Cheryl was half sitting on the bed, her upper body unclothed, her head bloodied with clear marks of heavy blows. At the foot of the bed lay a black mask. The autopsy revealed that Cheryl had been struck on the head with a hard object, likely a club or a large piece of wood. Blood and semen samples were collected, but most of the evidence was insufficient to identify the perpetrator immediately. Only a few strands of hair in the mask and bite marks on the victim's body were the most valuable clues. This case had not cooled before another incident occurred. On February 9, 1978, Lake City police received a call from Kimberly Leach's parents. Their 12-year-old daughter had disappeared after leaving school. Witnesses reported seeing Leach last getting into a car with a strange man. After 8 weeks of fruitless searching, her decomposed body was found in a park in Suwannee County. A few days before Leach's disappearance, a man in a white truck approached 14-year-old Leslie Parmenter, claiming to be from the fire station. Leslie sensed something was off when he wore civilian clothes, and was lucky her brother arrived in time. When shown Ted's photo, both siblings confirmed it was him. On February 15, 1978, while patrolling West Pensacola, Officer David Lee spotted a suspicious VW and decided to check it out. A license plate verification quickly revealed it was a stolen car. Ted Bundy sat behind the wheel, this time unable to escape the police after a fierce chase. Lee quickly handcuffed him. Throughout the trial process from 1977 to 1980, Ted Bundy tried to defend himself with familiar confidence and cunning. But nothing could overturn the crucial evidence. The bite marks on Lisa Levy's body perfectly matched Ted's teeth. Finally, after numerous trials, Ted Bundy was held responsible for the deaths of at least 30 people. However, the actual number could be higher, as there might have been more unreported victims. He was officially sentenced to death. At the trial, witnesses were stunned by Bundy's confidence and eerily calm demeanor while defending himself. His coldness and provocative smile became haunting images, broadcasted repeatedly in the news. When the death sentence was carried out on January 24, 1989, hundreds gathered outside Florida State Prison, cheering and celebrating with banners reading, "Burn, Bundy, burn." The scene reflected the relief of a nation freed from years of fear. The police concluded a long pursuit. Justice would finally be served. Thank you for following this tragic and haunting story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future stories. Leave a comment and share your thoughts on this case. See you in the next videos. In 2008, a 16-year-old girl in Hong Kong mysteriously disappeared. The police made efforts to investigate and discovered traces of her body parts at a meat stall in Kowloon. At the time of the incident, pork consumption in Kowloon significantly decreased. Rumors, fear, and obsession about the origins of the meat sold at the market spread among the public. The case shocked the Hong Kong public for a long time. It even served as inspiration for filmmakers many years later. So, what exactly happened to that girl? Who is responsible for these events? Subscribe to the channel and join us as we uncover these mysteries right away. Hong Kong, a vibrant port city, is famous for its dazzling neon lights and non-stop pace. Located at the crossroads of tradition and modernity, Kowloon, where the incident took place, is a bustling commercial center. Kowloon stands out with its narrow streets, diverse stalls, and bustling night markets where laughter and conversation blend with the noise of traffic. The old, cramped buildings full of life create a unique charm for this area. Beneath this lively and glamorous facade, few would suspect that this area witnessed a horrifying case that changed the entire face of the city. Beauty and evil coexist, intertwining to create a dramatic and breathtaking backdrop. Back to the story. On April 29, 2008, at the police station in the New Territories, the atmosphere became heavy when the Wong family arrived to report a case. Mrs. Wong, the mother with a haggard appearance, nervously recounted the disappearance of her youngest daughter, Wong Ka-mui, who had been missing for 3 days.
Since April 26th, Ka-mui hasn't come home. At first, we thought she might be at a friend's house, but we kept calling and couldn't reach her. We couldn't wait any longer, so we came here to ask for the police's help.
Ka-mui's older sister, Wong Ka-ping, accompanied their mother. She also shared,
On the night of April 26, around 11 p.m., my sister was still happily chatting at home. There was nothing unusual. The next morning, I didn't see Ka-mui anymore. I don't know where she went either.
The family stated that although Ka-mui occasionally stayed at her ex-boyfriend's house, she rarely stayed out overnight after their breakup. If she had to be home late, Ka-mui would always inform her mother and sister. Such prolonged absences had never occurred before. After completing their report, Mrs. Wong and Ka-ping returned home, leaving the police station deep in thought. Initially, Wong Ka-mui's case was treated as a routine report handed over to the Missing Persons Investigation Team in the New Territories, as disappearances, especially among teenagers, were not uncommon in Hong Kong. However, perhaps they made a slight mistake, for this would be a case that would shake the entire Hong Kong media. Wong Ka-mui, born in 1992, was originally from Shenzhou, Hunan, China. She was the second child in a less than harmonious family. Her mother, Kim Yan-ling, was a strong woman whose life was full of hardships. After her first marriage ended due to irreconcilable differences, she had to raise her 2 daughters, Ka-ping and Ka-mui, on her own. From a young age, Ka-mui lived in conditions of deprivation and loneliness. When she was 3 years old, her parents divorced. After some time, her mother decided to remarry a Hong Kong man over 50 years old, Mr. Chen, in the hope of securing a stable future for the family. But this marriage soon turned into a nightmare. Mr. Chen, her stepfather, was a lazy man who lived off welfare and depended on Yan-ling. He showed no interest in his wife's 2 stepdaughters. In 2000, Kim Yan-ling decided to take her eldest daughter to Hong Kong to settle down. Ka-mui, then only 8 years old, had to stay behind in Shenzhou alone. As a result, Ka-mui grew up with many psychological scars. The absence of her mother's love and witnessing her stepfather's indifference created an irreplaceable void in her soul. In 2005, at the age of 14, Ka-mui was finally brought to Hong Kong by her mother to reunite with the family. The young girl eagerly anticipated a new life where she could feel the warmth of family. But reality was not as she expected. Although her mother and sister were there, the presence of Mr. Chen cast a dark shadow over their home. When Ka-mui arrived in Hong Kong, everything seemed both unfamiliar and promising. The city's dazzling lights, towering buildings, and bustling crowds made her feel small and lost, unlike what she had imagined. The family's residence was a small apartment in Tai Wo Hao Estate, a public housing area for low-income residents. It was surrounded by a dense population of immigrants and low-income workers. Here, Ka-mui started attending the local middle school. She quickly stood out due to her intelligence and academic excellence. Her classmates noticed her aptitude, especially in mathematics, Chinese, and English. In her first year, she received a prestigious school scholarship for her outstanding achievements. However, not everything went smoothly. Her quiet and introverted nature made her a loner in class. Whispers from classmates and judgmental glances from teachers built an invisible wall separating her from everyone. Meanwhile, Mr. Chen, her stepfather, grew increasingly irritable and grumpy. Whenever he lacked money, he would lash out at everything around him and often spoke harshly to the family. Cold stares and unreasonable yelling became a routine part of Ka-mui's daily life. At the end of 2007, Ki.ll.er decided to sign up for a modeling class outside of school, hoping to find new joy and escape from reality. She dreamed of one day shining on the catwalk and making her mother proud. However, with her average physique, she did not receive much attention. Nonetheless, her passion for beauty was undeterred. She spent hours practicing makeup, experimenting with new styles, and coordinating outfits. In the evenings, Ki.ll.er and Ping would sit together, sharing their thoughts on cosmetics, clothing, and dreams for the future. They both signed up for a makeup class, attending 3 sessions a week, and tried out makeup styles they had only seen in magazines. By January 2008, as the cold winter enveloped Hong Kong, Ki.ll.er began to feel the weight of pressure. Her mother had to work tirelessly to maintain their livelihood, while her stepfather became increasingly irresponsible. To ease the family's burden and seek opportunities for herself, Ki.ll.er, then in 10th grade, made a bold decision. Studying no longer offered the future she envisioned. She didn't want her mother to toil for her sake anymore, so she chose to drop out of school. Her mother and sister were adamantly opposed when they heard this decision. However, faced with Ki.ll.er's determination, her mother and Ping had no choice but to reluctantly agree, their hearts heavy with worry. She left school and officially stepped into a world full of traps. The outside world was not what Ki.ll.er had imagined. Freedom came at a price. She started frequenting entertainment venues where loud music and bright lights blurred all reason. Initially, Ki.ll.er visited these places to unwind, seeking a bit of joy after exhausting days. But gradually, sleepless nights became a habit. She began meeting and associating with all kinds of people, from wealthy businessmen and stylish young women to the more sinister elements of society. Some of her new friends were generous, taking her to lavish parties where she was surrounded by music and colorful cocktails. Others were manipulative and scheming, only seeking her company for physical pleasure. Each relationship had its own nuances, but collectively, they pulled Ki.ll.er further away from the image of the innocent schoolgirl she once was. Over time, she began to enjoy the free-spirited lifestyle. She started seeing clients and often spent nights away from home. Ki.ll.er concealed the truth about her activities and gave vague answers when her mother inquired. This secrecy was one of the factors that led to her eventual disappearance. From the police's side, upon receiving the report, the first location they visited was Ki.ll.er's apartment in Tai Wo Hao Estate. Inside the apartment, the police meticulously searched every item, every drawer, but found nothing unusual. Finally, the investigators turned their attention to Ki.ll.er's personal computer. The data on the computer revealed that Ki.ll.er had registered an account on an adult forum. Her images appeared in many posts, with provocative photos and captions written by her to entice clients. The computer records also showed that on April 13th, Ki.ll.er had posted a new thread on the forum, arranging to meet a client late at night. A week later, someone left a review about her service. This information alarmed the police, making them worry that she might have been involved in dangerous relationships, so they immediately mobilized to find Ki.ll.er's whereabouts, suspecting this was no longer a simple missing persons case. Regular interactions with strangers from the forum had placed Ki.ll.er in a vulnerable situation. The police believed that these meetings posed significant risks and that there was a high chance she had been drawn into a dark scheme or encountered a dangerous individual. The family was completely unaware of Ki.ll.er's double life. Her sister, Ping, tearfully told the police that the two sisters were usually close and shared everything in life. But in recent months, Ki.ll.er often showed signs of anxiety and gloom. She would leave the house without explanation, and whenever she returned, she looked exhausted. Ping began to feel worried. On many occasions, she saw her sister interacting closely with older men, some even over 50 years old. At night, Ki.ll.er would often stay up very late. If she didn't go out, she would be engrossed in texting on her phone or secretly chatting. These conversations would often last until late at night, and there were nights when Ki.ll.er did not return home. When her mother or Ping asked, she would only reply,
"I'm meeting my boyfriend,"
but never brought anyone home or mentioned details about him. Although Ping knew her sister frequently used MSN to chat with friends, she never imagined that Ki.ll.er was involved in such physical work. By checking her messages, investigators discovered that the people Ki.ll.er interacted with were not just schoolmates or ordinary friends. Some were complex figures, from employees at karaoke bars to shady characters from Hong Kong's nightlife. When news of Ki.ll.er's disappearance was made public, it was reported by major and minor newspapers, stirring public concern. Headlines like, "Mysterious Disappearance of a Schoolgirl" and "Police Search for Missing Girl in Kowloon" became the talk of the town. On May 2, 2008, the police received valuable information. A man named A. Bang came to the police station to report that he had met Wong Ka-mui before she went missing. A Bang stated that they met through an adult online forum. Ki.ll.er used an anonymous account to offer intimate services for money. During their conversations, she even sent some private photos as assurance. Their exchange lasted a few days before they agreed to meet at a small hotel in Sham Shui Po on April 26. "I scheduled the meeting with her at around 10 p.m., a Bang said, his voice trembling. She was a bit late, wearing a long black coat and carrying a yellow handbag. Ki.ll.er seemed tense, her eyes constantly darting around as if afraid of being followed. The police listened intently, noting down every detail to ensure nothing was missed. That evening, Ki.ll.er appeared tired, not like the inviting tone she used on the forum. A Bang paid up front and only lay next to her to talk, without any physical interaction. During that time, Ki.ll.er was constantly focused on her phone. I asked if something was wrong, but Ki.ll.er just forced a smile and said it was private business. When I saw it was getting too late, I left first. It was a little past midnight, a Bang confirmed. He also admitted that, after talking to Ki.ll.er, he had developed feelings for her and was very worried when he couldn't reach her, so he went to the police, hoping to help find her quickly. After A. Bang provided his statement, he immediately became the prime suspect, since he was the last person known to have seen Wong Ka-mui before her disappearance. Through thorough investigation, the police confirmed that A. Bang's statement was true. Other witnesses at the hotel and CCTV footage showed A. Bang leaving the hotel at around 12:30 a.m. on April 27th, matching his account. According to A. Bang, that evening, while they lay on the bed, Wong Ka-mui confided in him about the difficulties she was facing. She had been deceived by a modeling agency and was in debt up to HKD 50,000. The amount was too large, beyond her financial capability. Notably, on the night of April 26th, Wong Ka-mui received a call from the modeling agency demanding an additional HKD 10,000 by May 1st, or else they would release sensitive photos and videos of her that they had collected. This threat pushed her to a dead end, leaving her no choice but to meet more clients to make money. The police suspected that after parting ways with A. Bang at around 12:30 a.m., Ki.ll.er might have met someone else. At this point, the police focused their investigation on the messages and mobile data from her phone number. An important detail was discovered. The last call Ki.ll.er made was at 1:45 p.m. on April 27th. The call lasted 53 seconds and was made from the Sham Shui Po subway station to an unregistered prepaid number. According to the chat history on Wong Ka-mui's MSN account, at 9:16 a.m. on April 27th, someone had arranged to meet her at the Sham Shui Po subway station at 1 p.m. The person had messaged that she should call before arriving so they could pick her up. The IP of this message was traced to a computer in a building on Shek Kip Mei Street, just a short distance from the Sham Shui Po subway station. This clue made the police strongly suspect that this individual was directly involved in Wong Ka-mui's mysterious disappearance. They quickly investigated and found that the IP address belonged to an apartment in Yan Fat building, an area notorious for being a gathering place for suspicious individuals and where illegal activities frequently occurred. During the tense investigation, a new clue emerged, opening a new chapter in the case. On May 5th at midnight, a man with a worried and anxious expression walked into the New Territories police station. It was a duck, a man around 30 years old, trembling as he recounted that he had reason to believe his friend, Ding Kai-tai, could be the culprit behind Wong Ka-mui's disappearance. The duck, stuttering and with frightened eyes, said that a few days after Ki.ll.er went missing, Ding Kai-tai had called him in an unusually excited state. Over the phone, Ding revealed that he had met GMI on the night of April 27th. The two had used drugs and had sex in his apartment. In a moment of climax, GMI repeatedly said she wanted to die to escape the pressures of life. So in his state of ecstasy and under the influence of drugs, he decided to help her fulfill that wish. He described how he strangled her for a few minutes until she completely stopped breathing. It's possible that the girl was complicit in this, so he didn't feel much resistance from her, with her hands only clutching the bedsheet until she stopped breathing. Hearing this over the phone terrified A-Duck, but he still didn't fully believe Ding's story, thinking it was just the ramblings of a drug-induced state. However, his suspicion grew when Ding Kai-tai continued to describe how he disposed of the body. He detailed dismembering the victim in the bathroom with a knife and removing the flesh to dispose of separately. He transported the bones, after removing the flesh, to a pork stall at the k.ill.er market, intentionally hiding them among pig bones. The remaining parts were scattered in different places throughout the city. Despite the horrifying nature of Ding's story, A-Duck still didn't want to believe it was true. He thought Ding was either lying or in a paranoid state due to drug abuse. But when news of Wong Ka-mui's disappearance spread widely, A-Duck felt that there were too many coincidences in his friend's account. After many sleepless nights, unable to escape the haunting nature of Ding's words, A-Duck decided to report everything he knew to the police. He understood this could put his friend in danger, but he could no longer remain silent. Upon receiving A-Duck's testimony, the police immediately realized this case was more complex than they had thought. The disappearance of Wong Ka-mui was officially handed over to the Kowloon West Serious Crimes Unit, where experienced investigators were working. After many hours of analyzing data and traces from the adult forum, the police traced the IP address of the last message from Wong Ka-mui's MSN account. It led them to an apartment in Yan Fat Building, hidden deep within the old, dark housing area of k.ill.er, where the streetlights barely illuminated the figures of passersby. This location coincided with what A-Duck revealed as Ding Kai-tai's residence, suggesting that his testimony was likely accurate. The Kowloon West Serious Crimes Unit, led by veteran investigator Lam Zi-feng, planned an operation to surround and apprehend him. That night, at 11 p.m., the atmosphere was stiflingly quiet. Ding Kai-tai's silhouette appeared, moving in an ordinary manner, without a hint of suspicion. As soon as Ding Kai-tai touched the door handle, a slight creak echoed.
"Police, stay where you are."
A series of flashlights shone directly into his eyes. Ding Kai-tai panicked and tried to run, but was immediately subdued. He was taken to the station for interrogation. Simultaneously, the police searched Ding Kai-tai's apartment. The findings left everyone breathless. Blood splatters on the walls, door frames, and a torn shower curtain soaked in dark red stains. A CD lay in the computer drive, still marked with dried blood. At first, Ding Kai-tai appeared calm, refusing to answer any questions related to GMI. However, his composure was shaken when DNA tests confirmed that the bloodstains belonged to Wong Ka-mui. This cramped, dimly lit apartment was indeed the scene of an unimaginable crime. After being intensely interrogated for hours, he suddenly mentioned the name Hui Zi, a close friend who had worked with him, claiming that this person had helped him dispose of the body and that he alone was responsible for killing GMI. However, after verification, it turned out that Hui Zi was just a made-up name in his moment of panic. There was no such person. Regarding GMI's body, Kai-tai admitted that after killing her during a frenzied state, he tried to eliminate all evidence by disposing of her head in the sea near the Kowloon Pier. The remaining body parts were dismembered and scattered in various places around the city, including the pork stalls at the k.ill.er market. His confession shocked the police and the public alike. The image of human remains mixed with pork sold at the market triggered waves of panic throughout the area. The news that Ding Kai-tai disposed of the body by throwing bones and meat into pork stalls sent ripples of terror through the public. At the Kowloon Pier, divers repeatedly descended, expanding their search area under the seabed, but found no traces. As for the body parts hidden at the market, he couldn't recall their exact location. And even if he did, there was no certainty that they hadn't already been consumed as regular pork. With the current evidence, The case was now becoming clearer, and investigators began reconstructing the entire series of events. Early that morning, after leaving a bar at around 7 a.m., Ding Kai-tai was still under the influence of drugs. He returned to his apartment, his mind spinning in a chaotic state. Unable to sleep, he decided to contact Wong Ka-mui. By 1 p.m., Wong Ka-mui arrived at his apartment. The two used drugs together and later engaged in sexual activities. Around 3 p.m., when Ding Kai-tai woke up, he was shocked to see Wong Ka-mui lying motionless on the bed, foam at her mouth, her body cold. He vaguely remembered strangling her during a high. After a few moments of fear and confusion, Ding Kai-tai began to think more coldly. He devised a plan to dismember the body to avoid being caught. Believing that disposing of the evidence this way would keep him from being imprisoned, he started cutting the body with a saw and knife. The process of dismembering the body took hours. Draining the blood took about 10 to 15 minutes, but skinning and separating the meat proved more difficult than he anticipated. Ding Kai-tai figured out that skinning first would make it easier to separate the meat from the bones, similar to butchering a pig. To avoid clogging the toilet, he cut the body into small pieces and flushed them bit by bit. The fingers and toes, cut into small parts, were flushed away with running water, one by one, to prevent them from clogging. He did this with an eerie patience, as if performing a daily routine. By 10 p.m., when the larger bones couldn't be flushed down, Ding Kai-tai decided to strip all the meat and break it down into easily concealable pieces. He took these meat fragments to the pork stall at the Kip-mei market during the night when it was empty, and mixed them with pig bones to avoid detection. The following morning, he took Wong Ka-mui's head onto a bus and went to the Kowloon Pier. There, while no one was watching, he quietly tossed the head into the sea before returning home. In the days that followed, Ding Kai-tai continued his daily routines, calling a duck several times to boast about his actions. Many might wonder why Ding Kai-tai seemed unafraid after committing such a series of atrocities. To answer this, let's delve further into his background. Ding Kai-tai, nicknamed Fat Tai, was born and raised in a middle-class family in Hong Kong. From a young age, he was known as a rebellious child, often causing trouble and getting into fights with peers. At 16, Ding Kai-tai began indulging in vices. Initially, he only drank alcohol at parties with friends, but gradually he moved on to stronger substances. Drugs became an inseparable part of his life from 2001. During those dark days, Ding Kai-tai frequently drowned in a state of euphoria induced by drugs, unable to distinguish reality from hallucination. Those around him described him as someone who couldn't control his anger, prone to losing his temper and erupting in fits of rage. He was arrested multiple times for causing public disturbances and assaulting others, but these punishments weren't enough to deter him. People recounted that Ding Kai-tai often bragged about his wild lifestyle, about parties that lasted until dawn with drugs and prostitutes. He spent money lavishly, borrowed from everywhere, and never repaid. When he could no longer sustain his expenses, he fell into deep debt, and this pressure drove him further into a spiral of vices. The combination of a tainted past, drug abuse, and distorted beliefs led Ding Kai-tai to become a cold-blooded killer. The police determined that his act of murder wasn't the result of a sudden burst of anger, but a loss of control due to a mind corrupted by years spent in a mire of vice and violence. During interrogation, although Ding Kai-tai often claimed not to remember the details of the crime and tried to blame it on drug-induced states, both the police and psychological experts agreed that he was fully aware of what he was doing. Evidence from the investigation exposed his true nature. A depraved, cold-blooded individual willing to do anything to cover up his crimes. Although he confessed, the victim's body had yet to be found. This would prove to be an extremely difficult task for the investigators. On the afternoon of May 8, 2008, with the assistance of the Drainage Services Department staff, police rushed to the alleys and sewers along Kip-mei Road, from numbers 37 to 39, to search for any remaining body parts of the victim. Mud and waste were pulled up from the sewers. Hundreds of people, from drainage services staff to forensic experts, gathered to sort through and search for clues. By the night of May 9th, The results from the piles of mud dug up from the sewers revealed over 20 small pieces of flesh, suspected to be human. Through testing, it was confirmed that these belonged to Wong Ka-mui. This was likely all that remained of her. In July 2009, the trial of Ding Kai-tai began, drawing significant public attention. The gruesome details from the investigation, from dismembering the body to disposing of the remains, were vividly described by the prosecutor, causing gasps throughout the courtroom. The prosecutor did not hesitate to delve into the details. He reiterated Ding Kai-tai's brutal actions, recounting how he dismembered the victim and disposed of her body parts in the sewers and meat stalls. Each word and piece of evidence presented struck like a dagger in the hearts of everyone present, especially Wong Ka-mui's family. The defense attempted to argue that Ding Kai-tai's long-term drug abuse led to mental instability, but that could not justify his unimaginable cruelty. Finally, after days of heated debate, the trial reached its conclusion. The jury unanimously found Ding Kai-tai guilty. The court sentenced Ding Kai-tai to life imprisonment, with no possibility of parole. Outside the courtroom, public opinion was divided. One side was outraged by Ding Kai-tai's heinous acts, while the other pondered how a young man could spiral so deeply into crime. Ding Kai-tai did not say a word as he was escorted out of the courtroom. He only lowered his head with a vacant stare, walking through the shouts of the crowd. To those following the trial, Wong Ka-mui's story became a symbol of the dangers and traps in a society full of uncertainties. Thank you for following this tragic and haunting story. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to not miss any upcoming stories. Leave a comment and share your thoughts on this case. See you in the next videos.